Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have a special double serving. Iridion 3D and Iridion II. Two awesome GBA shooters recently ported to PC. What kind of taste will they have? Let's get cooking and find out. From German developer Shinan and published by Majesco, Iridion 3D and Iridion II would release for the GBA in 2001 and 2003 respectively. Now in 2020, thanks once again to Majesco and ported by Pico Interactive, they're available for the PC via Steam. So these are two really unique, awesome shoot-'em-ups that do an excellent job of showing what the GBA was capable of. There weren't a lot of shooters that released for the GBA, but these two definitely stand apart as some of the great examples of what the system was capable of. So first off, we'll start with Iridion 3D. This one is a rail shooter, quite different from the sequel, which you'll see in a second. Menu-wise, this is relatively bare bones. You have option, password, and start. There was no battery backup on these cards, which is an interesting choice. Unfortunately, which I'll show a little bit later, there is a really good, at least it's bare bones, but the port does have some nice quality of life features that we can use. So starting the game itself, we're dropped right into our first stage, escape through the disposal tunnel. So the story basically is that Earth has been invaded by the force, this enemy force, the Iridians, and you're tasked with flying through all these environments to ultimately destroy this menace. So right off the bat, at least to me, this doesn't feel like a Game Boy Advance title at all. It has more of a feel of something that was a little more powerful in system and scope. An idea of maybe something like Soulstar for the Sega CD, which was an excellent title, and in a lot of ways this game kind of does capture that feel. You've got a great 3D feel in this rail shooter, provided through the great use of scaling and sprites that are on display here. But there are some issues. So one of them is that the size of your ship is actually quite large. And if you set up yourself in such a way that you're straight on to oncoming enemies, you're actually blocking a lot of the screen, so you might not be able to see incoming enemies and incoming shots. So that problem aside, we have really limited ability for what we can actually do. So you can move and you can shoot, and in this title, that's about it. There are power-up upgrades that we can get, as you just saw there. There were two power-ups, a red one and a green one. So you start with the red shot by default. It's just kind of your basic, weak, we'll call it a laser. And throughout the course of the game, you'll get many upgrades. Here's another one that we can potentially get. That flashing rainbow one actually refills our life. Very useful. So this game does use a life system, or rather a health system, in addition to having lives. So our lives are displayed in the top left, our health is displayed in the top right. Back to the weapon selection. So if you select a weapon, that's different from your current weapon, it will default to the base level 1. But if you happen to select a weapon that matches your current weapon, it will upgrade all the way up to level 3. So here we have the red shot, or red laser, at level 2. The other weapons, the green one is kind of a conical spread. It's not very focused and is actually a pretty terrible weapon in my opinion. There's a purple weapon that is, it looks like you're firing pellets of rice. So they're very much that glowing rice look for shoot 'em up projectiles. That travel in a spiral that's definitely a slower firing weapon than the red laser, but it's more effective. Then there's also yellow torpedoes that you can obtain. They do a fair bit of damage, but they are a little slower. And then towards the end of the game, there's also upgrade to that, the blue, which handles the same way as the yellows, but are very rare in that they don't show up till the end of the game. So we actually are fighting some enemies that are shooting back, and you can kind of see that it's just difficult to sometimes see the incoming enemy shots, mainly because of our own ship. We've finished the first stage, now we're loading up the boss. So between the stage section and the boss itself, we have these neat little screens that give you a 3D image of the boss and the name itself, so the Refuser. And there's this really awesome sequence where the screen opens up and we see this boss here. I really love these core boss fights for some reason, but the problem I was noting with blocking our own view of enemy shots is very, very prominent here, as once the core closes, it fires a barrage of shots at us, and if we remain in the middle of the screen, we won't see any of those shots actually coming our direction. But in order to shoot the core, that's where we need to be. We also have those flying drones, which do a wonderful job of getting in our way and just in general hurting our ship. So there's a fair bit more in terms of game length to Iridion 3D, but you kind of seen what it has to offer as far as gameplay is concerned. So one complaint I do have is there is no boss health indicator, though as you've noticed the core itself is cracked and it shows signs of damage throughout the course of the fight, giving you an idea of how you've progressed. It would still be nice to see a health bar. Completing the stage, we do get a little bit of a stage clear bonus and our password, should we want to continue that way. And we move on to stage 2, Dogfight Above the Pacific. So this stage in particular notes an issue that I feel this game has, where it just doesn't feel like we're a very powerful force to be reckoned with, as a lot of the enemies do get past us, and I feel it's really easy to just take damage in this one. Still, it's incredible to think that this title was released for the Game Boy Advance relatively early in its life cycle. It looks great and it plays pretty well for what it is. I'm not 100% sure if it's necessarily the port or if it was present in the original, but I did encounter some slowdown in some of the later stages in this title. So there we have it, Iridion 3D served up for your enjoyment. I'm going to take a quick moment to swap over to its sequel, Iridion II. Here we find ourselves at the title screen of Iridion II. Before we dive in, there's something I want to show real quick. So at the bottom here you have 4 categories: lead, chords, bass, and drums. Those happen to be the sound sets for the synthesized music that's in the game itself. So I can't think of many games that really allow you to play around with which sounds you're using for your music, kind of giving everything a custom feel. You can kind of pick the way you want your music to be, and it's just a really neat extra feature that Iridion II has. Although I must say Iridion 3D and Iridion II both have excellent music. Starting the game, we're taken to the title screen here, and it's similar to Iridion 3D at this point, where we have the ability to start the game, in this case a new game, or a password. The options will come shortly afterwards. Starting with the new game, we see that there's actually a difference right away. We're selecting our difficulty setting right off the bat: Starter, Pilot, Advanced, or Ace. We'll just go Starter Pilot just to show off the game. Then we're taken to this screen, which kind of gives us a better view of what this title has to offer. It actually is far more story-driven than the original Iridion 3D. Of course, Iridion 2 drops the whole 3D, although I could think it could still stand to keep that in there. Although, incidentally, something that's interesting to note, if you look at the window title for this particular application, it's actually Iridion 3D 2. Just a fun little note there. But it's more story-based, so you have the story mode, and as we progress through the game, we'll unlock the arcade mode, and if you were to complete all of story mode, the challenge mode, and then there's these extras we can unlock as well. Starting in story mode, it actually has this relatively nice story that is even digitally voiced that tells us what's going on. So it's been 100 years since the first Iridion, and we're tasked with taking out the Iridion forces that have come back. There's these anime-style cutscenes between several of our story sections, and there's even this awesome tutorial which introduces us to the systems, which are more robust than the original. So first off, we're going to skip the training and dive right into the gameplay. I like Spaceport Alpha, so we'll start here. So we have 6 weapons to choose from rather than the 5 in Iridion 3D. One of the neat features is we can select which one we're starting on the stage. So you've got your basic plasma, we've got the pulse, there's this radiant beam, which really reminds me of the round Vulcan from Axlay, and any game that has a weapon like that, definitely a plus in my book. There's the swarm, there's the seeking laser, and there's the deflector laser. So for just showing off the simplistic gameplay, we'll just go with the plasma as it's your default shot laser. You have the ability to turn on both an auto upgrade or leaving that off. I recommend using a manual upgrade rather than an auto. So to show that off, here's a power-up that we pick up. If we pick that up, like in addition to our shot button, we do actually control when and what we upgrade. So you can use the L and R to cycle between all of your weapons displayed there in the top right. But if you happen to use the weapon that you're set to by default, for like one that you already have unlocked, you'll upgrade that weapon. Should you choose a weapon that you haven't unlocked yet, you'll unlock that weapon and it'll be available for use. So it's possible to upgrade, like Iridion 3D, it's possible to upgrade the weapons 3 times. Well, the level 1, level 2, level 3, so I guess that's not necessarily 3 times. You can upgrade it twice. But one feature that's neat here is, of course, you can move to any other weapon and use that weapon should you choose. However, if you don't, but you still have power-ups in reserve, you will upgrade, you will restore your health rather than upgrade the weapon further. So let's get this weapon all the way up to level 3, denoted by the 3 bars underneath the icon for the plasma itself. Another thing to note, as you upgrade the weapon, you'll gain satellites on either side of your ship. So those options can move up and down if you're not firing, but while you are firing, they'll be locked into position. They do have the useful feature of blocking incoming enemy shots, so you can use that as a defensive mechanism. So here we have the ability to both pick up an upgrade or pick up full health. We'll go with the full health pickup. Though that would have been a good opportunity to show off upgrading or show off using the upgrade power-ups to restore your health rather than picking up the full health itself. But do note that it's great to save those power-ups if you have a weapon that works well for the stage that you're on. And really, in most situations, even though the other weapons are good, the plasma is probably the one you're wanting to use as it's the most powerful. But there's actually a couple awesome features this game has. So in addition to that, if you, instead of holding down the button, if you double tap it, you'll start to charge up and fire this powerful beam that's really great at dealing damage to bosses. But what's even better, if we press the L and R buttons at the same time, we can release an awesome smart bomb, which will devastate normal enemies on screen and deal a hefty amount of damage to both mini bosses and stage bosses alike. So with that, that stage taken care of. Now here's a good opportunity to show the extra features that were added to the port itself. So for gameplay sake, if you want to press escape, it'll bring up this menu here. We can see that we can restart, we can quit. You do have to use your mouse for this, so it's just something to keep in mind. And you have several options for your window size. So if you go full screen, which is what we see here, you have the game screen blocked in by these star backgrounds, more of a bluish purple for Iridion 3D and this nice green for Iridion 2. If you select one of the windowed options, you'll have a borderless window with no background. You also have the ability to turn on stretch or smooth. I do like how the game looks with smooth, so I do have that turned on. And another awesome feature, we can actually make saves. So I have saves placed several points throughout the game. So we'll load up this next save so we can see the next set of stages. So this game is broken down into 5 sections where we're selecting several stages in each section. So there's actually quite a bit of gameplay to Iridion II, making it by far the superior title in so many ways. So let's go with Shigetsu City. And picking a different weapon this time, I'll pick the Swarm. So this one's pretty neat because it acts as a homing shot. So the cloud background here is a little bit pixelated, but this stage has a really neat gimmick, I guess, that I wanted to show. So you've got these platforms that are blocking your way, and in order to get them out of our way, we have to shoot them, and they'll kind of behave like a windmill, twirling away, using our shots as the force that's pushing them away from us. So the Swarm actually is not the best weapon for this, so I'm going to go back to... Actually, no, let's go with the Seeking Laser. So the Seeking Laser fires directly ahead of our ship, but then once it encounters an enemy in its horizontal axis, it will divert left or right to hit that enemy. Pretty useful. So this starfish mini-boss, we need to destroy the various arms of the fish before we can, well, it looks like a starfish anyway, before we can actually damage the core itself. Just so I don't lose a life here, I'll use a bomb. That wasn't one thing I went over in the original Iridion. So Iridion 3D uses a life system where you continue where you die, whereas Iridion 2 uses a checkpoint system. So you might have noticed that there are these green circles I've been touching. Those green circles are our checkpoints. So I was talking about something else while we were seeing them, but there's these neat little windmill platforms that are triggers, I guess, that we need to shoot to open these gates. It's a really neat feature and just shows a little bit of creative level design that you might not otherwise have in this kind of shoot 'em up. So there we have it. Iridion II served up for your enjoyment. So between the two titles, Iridion II is definitely the one that I would most recommend. It's definitely has better gameplay, and in a lot of ways, Iridion 3D kind of feels like a glorified tech demo that, while it really shows off what the GBA can do from both a graphics and a sound standpoint, it's not a particularly strong shoot 'em up itself. Whereas Iridion 2 still does a good job of showing a unique look for the GBA, but it happens to stand apart as actually being a really good shoot 'em up itself. Now this boss is actually really fascinating. You use those same windmill features to move the boss around, exposing its weak point, and if we can get it into a good position, you can take it out quickly, or we can also use our smart bombs to deal really heavy, fast damage. One other thing I did forget to mention earlier, if you happen to lose lives, you do downgrade your weapon, but that you currently have equipped. However, it's only by one stage. So, minus flavors. As far as Iridion 3D is concerned, the biggest minus flavor there is just the lack of variety it has. It's a relatively basic gameplay, and it does have a problem as well with the size of your ship being overly large for what you're trying to accomplish in the game itself. You get in your way as much as anything else as far as obstacles are concerned. Iridion II, if I had any complaint to put about it, and this one does admittedly pertain to Iridion 3D as well, is the gameplay is, well, the stages can feel a little bit overly long. Some of the stages are about the right length, but in a lot of cases I feel like the stages could be like two-thirds or even half of their length, and they would accomplish the same feeling without overstaying their welcome. But on the plus flavor, it's for both of them, it's really great to see just these classic GBA shooters revived, and they've got the excellent music, and then with Iridion II, there's all the new unique systems they added on top of the gameplay from Iridion 3D. So, from a perspective of interesting gameplay and what the GBA was capable of, Iridion 3D is an interesting title to look at, but it's not one that I can give a strong recommendation to. But Iridion II is one that I can give a strong recommendation to. So if you're interested, I have included the link to the Iridion collection in the comments or down in the section below, and it's definitely the better way to purchase it, as the price point is the best for picking up both titles rather than just one or the other. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.